What's up, guys? It's Overrays Game. Welcome back with another reaction and continuation to World Gone Mad Series Season 2, Episode 3, and Episode 4, Blood on the Blade and Broken Man. So, this is going to be tight, for sure, but we're doing it. We're here. So, smash that like button, smash the subscribe when you guys are new and appreciate it. We're about 10 subs away from 6.1k subscribers. That is insanity. I appreciate the love and support as always. Please definitely do check out Dan Reviews, his channel. Link is in the description, as well as his playlist. That will also be in the description. At the moment of live streaming, it's not there yet, but it will be. So definitely do check them out. I'll be adding it in a second. I just want to jump right into it right away because we're actually kind of pushing it a little bit with the episode. So I may start just a couple minutes late or something like that with Last of Us Season 2, Episode 1 reaction, which by the way I already had that scheduled. I scheduled at 8:55, but I might exactly start at that time exactly, just because we're scrunching everything so tightly. So we got a lot of content. Hit that bell. Be part of the notification squad. We got stream after stream after stream tonight, my boys, with the 10-hour Fortnite live stream being right after the HBO Season 2, Episode 1. So, of course, you're not going to be able to see the entire episode as it is copyright. But you will be able to hear the entire thing and watch my reaction with it. So, hope you guys enjoyed. Again, I'll be making a playlist for Season 2 of The Last of Us, as I did for Season 1. I believe I did. I'd have to double check just to make sure. But let me know how you guys are all doing. Would appreciate that very much. I'm just going to kind of jump on stuff right away. Stupid ass thing. Didn't even mean to do that. But yeah, I'm gonna jump right into it. We're gonna be very fast and speedy with this. So I apologize. I had to go to the restroom and it went way longer than I anticipated. So curse my damn body for being a bitch, for making me do that at the last frickin' second, because that was not what I wanted to do. You ate up all my goddamn time, pissed me off, as I wanted to start this a little bit more earlier, so at least I would have had a little bit of a gap, you know what I mean? But being a piece of shit, so apologize on that. So I'm going to quickly link the stuff in the description. Like I said, I'm going to be a couple minutes late, but it's not going to be anything too bearable, of course. So bear with me. So, stupid ass fucking honest autocorrect. I don't need you to be a bitch right now. Oh my fucking god, Jesus. Piece of shit. Alrighty. So yeah, I'm gonna be a little bit, but it is what it is. I'm trying to scram it all in. Oh my god, just fix it for me. Jesus Christ. No, I gotta do it. Alright. So, unfortunately, Mr. Heisenberg is not going to be able to join us for the, at least not in person, is not able to join us for the episode itself. He is going to come in by phone and give us, I think, initial thoughts. At the very end, so we will have that. But unfortunately, he will not be with the episode. Unfortunately. As you know, reacting to. So, but anyways, we're gonna jump right into it right away. So subscribe to Dan. I just put the links in the description. Just refresh the stream, and you will see them. So here's episode 3 of We're Going Mad season 2. So been pretty good. Been pretty good so far. Subscribe to Dan, check out the playlist, links below.
Season 2, Episode 3, Blood on the Blade.
Chris.
We open with the burn and we can see Keith is still hanging off the roof, but now he's one of the reanimated.
Damn.
We see 2 guys cut the rope and a reanimated Keith is on the ground, now growling at them. We get the reveal that it's Chris and his men who have found him like this. Chris then pulls out his knife and puts it directly through his skull. Chris then says, "Poor bastard." He laughs and then looks back at his men and he says, "I mean, he didn't even have a chance, did he? I should have seen that one coming. Every time I leave Gary in charge, shit like this always happens." One of his men asks, "You think this is the doing of the new folks?" Chris says, "It crossed my mind." Chris then puts his boot over the reanimated Keith's head and starts stomping his head in over and over again until the blood starts pouring out of his head and all over the ground.
Jesus. That's insanity.
Then Chris starts walking to his truck and says to his men, "Take what you want and let's get the fuck out of here." One of his guys takes Keith's jacket and then Chris and his men all get into the truck before the deadheads up the road get to them.
Damn. That's crazy. Damn, like the build up. Shit. Getting concerning. Up there, that's cool. Okay, what's up, Dan? Do the 3 time. Yes, sir. We're squeezing it in. It's very gonna be crunch. Because I'm jumping right into season 2 of Last of Us right after.
Lincoln would say to Blake, "I knew these people were some sick bastards, but this is one fucked up collection they've got going here." Blake asks, "So what do we do?" Lincoln then hears the men walking down the hall and looking for them, so he quickly says to Blake, "All right, we're gonna get through these and go up the exit back there. You ready?" Blake says, "It's just a few kills each. We'll be fine." Lincoln and Blake start stabbing these deadheads. Lincoln uses his knife and stabs one after another and after another in a hurry. Blake uses the other side of his gun and starts smashing their heads in.
Damn. Jesus. Great picture.
They are getting ever closer to the exit. The men are still in the halls looking for them, and they sound like they are getting closer. Lincoln and Blake keep stabbing and smashing these deadheads' faces in. And then, they reach the exit, but the door won't open. Lincoln, in a panic, keeps trying, but the door just won't open. Lincoln then starts kicking the door in. Then with all this noise, the men hear them. Lincoln is trying to kick the door in, but then Blake says, "Lincoln?" They see the men come in from the other door that they came in, and then the men see them from a distance trying to get through the exit door. But then suddenly, Lincoln finally kicks the door in. The men start shooting at Lincoln and Blake as they run out the exit door, but the men are not able to kill Lincoln and Blake. After Lincoln and Blake quickly close the door behind them, they continue to run through the halls and look for Tom and Joel.
Damn.
Gary would be roaming the halls with a few other men with guns and would tell them, "If Lincoln wants to play hardball, I'm his man. These fucking people are goddamn animals." He then tells his men, "You find Lincoln, you kill him no matter what. Do not let that man leave this factory alive."
Yeah, no, you ain't killing my homie. Nah.
Flashback, 2 days after the season 1 finale.
Okay. Interesting.
We see a hand covered with scars, and we see it's Tom sitting in his new backyard at the suburban estates. We see Sydney and Emma must be the next house over, because Sydney is out cleaning her backyard, and she sees Tom wrapping his hand. Sydney asks, "You need some help with that?" Tom says, "Nah, I almost got it." Sydney laughs and she says, "It doesn't look like it." Tom would say, "Oh yeah, what do you know there, genius?" Sydney would say, "Hang on, I'll be right over."
Damn.
Sydney would come next door and Sydney would start laughing and Tom would say, "I know, I did a shit job." Sydney would say, no, it's, yeah, just let me." And she would start patching up his hand and they would talk as she helps him.
Damn.
"So how you been doing?" Tom would say, "Fine, I guess." Sydney would say, "You sure? I never see you. And Lincoln's worried about you." Tom says, "Well, my door's always open, so if the guy wants to talk, he can." Sydney says, "Yeah, but shouldn't be just him doing all of that. I mean, Lincoln should know you're still here." Tom wouldn't say anything, and then Sydney would know, and she would say, "You still want to find him, don't you?" Tom says, "The bastard isn't dead." Sydney looks at him and says, "I get it. I can help you finish this thing with Dave." Sydney finishes wrapping up his hand, and Tom would say, "Look, I appreciate your concern, you and Lincoln, but this was Billy's fight, and I'm gonna finish it for him." Tom would get up and walk away. Sydney looked sad for him, and she would walk back over to her house, and Tom would say, "Thanks." We would see Tom have a small smile on his face.
I respect that. I respect that.
Currently, then we would slowly transition to Tom in the current timeline, and he's locked up inside of a cell, and he looks scared because he's all alone and he doesn't know where Lincoln is.
Damn. Fucking Dave.
He then hears the sound of gunshots being fired, and Tom can't do anything but just sit there and wait for it to hopefully end, because he's locked in the cell.
Fucking Dave, man, he needs to die.
Dave and his men are walking back to their camp. Sydney and Emma's hands are tied up, and they're walking down the road.
God damn it. Like I said, he'd be a dead man. I wouldn't let him get away.
Sydney asks, so how did you survive? Dave says, well, your fucking crazy friend almost pushed me to my end, meaning Tom. But I lived. I found people that needed someone like me. Sydney says, someone like you, huh? Dave says, oh yeah. I'm sure Lincoln's a great leader. How's that prick doing anyway? Sydney says, none of your business is how he's doing. Dave would laugh, and then one of his men would say, Dave, we'll have to stop for the night. We won't make it back home until way after nightfall. Dave says, all right, we'll find a place for the night.
God damn, Dave. I'd throw a grenade in there and make sure he's dead. Blow his ass up.
They slowly head into this tunnel, and one of Dave's men hears the sound of growling down the other end of the tunnel. Dave and his men move in slowly, as they take Sydney and Emma with them. One of Dave's men says, it doesn't sound like many of them. We can probably take them out, no problem. Dave says, alright, let's do this carefully. They all pull out their guns, and then the dead start coming at them.
Damn. Ah, let him hit you.
All of Dave's men start shooting at the dead at the same time with machine guns. Sydney and Emma, who are still tied up, are standing back and watching them take out the dead. Once they're done, Dave starts laughing, and Sydney looks at him and she says, you really enjoy this, don't you? Weird fuck. Dave would try to stop laughing and say, what? You're telling me you never had this much fun taking out the dead? Sydney says, no, but you do. You fit right into this world, that's for damn sure. And Dave would walk away from them and go to his men and say, take out the bodies, this will be our place for the night.
Sure.
Back at the factory. Lincoln and Blake are quickly walking down this hall. They then discover some jail cells, but they are all empty. Then suddenly, Tom is revealed to be in one of them, and we see Lincoln and Blake find Tom in the cell. Lincoln looks happy to see Tom is alright, but he's very much in a hurry because he hears Gary and his men are not too far away, and he needs to get Tom out of the cell.
Oh shit. Damn.
Lincoln quickly tries to unlock the cell door with the set of keys that he took from the dead man. He tries the first key and it doesn't open the door. Son of a bitch! Blake says, try the other one. Tom says, don't get killed because of me. Go while you still can. Lincoln says, alright, let's try the other one. He tries the other and the only other key, and it also doesn't work. And then they hear down the hall Gary, who says, Lincoln, is that you? Lincoln is desperately hurrying up and trying to get the door to unlock. Tom keeps saying, just leave me, man. Gary says, I know you're somewhere down here. And as Tom says, get out of here, the door unlocks.
Damn. Fucking last second bullshit. Jesus.
Tom rushes out of the cell door. Lincoln, Tom, and Blake start running down the hall, and they hear Gary say, Lincoln, you're a dead man walking. Lincoln, Tom, and Blake are trying to find Joel. They then run down the bottom floor and go down this huge set of stairs. As they are going down the stairs, they hear someone screaming out in pain.
Ooh.
Lincoln, Tom, and Blake go down the bottom floor, and they open the first door to their left, and they find Joel with a bag on his head, about to be tortured by one of Chris's men.
Oh, shit.
And the man turns around with a knife in his hand.
Oh shit. Damn, this is intense. Jesus.
He then notices Lincoln, Tom, and Blake standing at the door, and Lincoln is pointing the machine gun at him, and he says, "Step the fuck away from them." The man would laugh, and he would say, "This is our world now. You're always gonna kill, but people like you haven't gotten their hands dirty before, and you're not about to do it now." And then Lincoln would shoot him right in the heart, and the man would fall. Blake would then rush to Joel, and then he would take the bag off his head, and he would ask, "Are you okay? Did he hurt you at all?" Joel would say, "No, I'm fine." And Blake would know he's lying because he has a big cut on his leg.
Ugh. Ouch. Damn.
Blake would look at it and he would say to Lincoln, "We need to get out of here." Lincoln would be still holding his gun and he would say, "Yeah, Tom, can you check up the door to make sure it's clear?" Tom would look out the hall and he would hear men far down the hall, and Tom would tell Lincoln, "It's time to go. They're coming." Lincoln would look back at the slaughterhouse that they're in and say, "Blake, get Joel and let's go."
Damn. Hopefully you're able to get him out easily. Or it doesn't screw you over.
They run through the halls and they are trying to find their way out, and Lincoln says to Tom, Blake, and Joel as he points to the exit down the hall, "There." They then run to the door and quickly exit the building.
Oh shit.
They then are outside the factory building, but they need to find their way outside the walls. They then run through the front yard and they are trying to find their way over the fence.
This area we get Joel. Break him free.
We then see a sniper on the roof of the factory building, aiming an AK-47 at Lincoln, Tom, Blake, and Joel from a distance. Tom points towards the fence where they can try to make a run for it and get out. Tom says, "We run and we jump over the fence and we go." Lincoln agrees and looks at Blake and Joel and says, "It's the only way we get out." Tom asks Joel, "Can you run, kid?" Joel says, Yeah, I can." Blake asks him if he's sure, but then they start getting shot at by the sniper on the roof.
Shit.
Lincoln and the others run for the fence, and Tom tells them as they're running to run side to side so they can't shoot them. The sniper misses a few shots and reloads. Lincoln and the others are running for their lives, and then they make it to the fence.
Woo. Damn.
Lincoln quickly hops over the fence. Tom follows and makes it over the fence. Then Blake goes over, and finally Joel. As Joel climbs up the fence, he gets shot in the head as he's looking at Blake in the eyes on the other side of the fence.
Damn. Terrible way to go.
Joel is killed and falls off the fence and to the ground. Blake screams, "No."
Damn.
We see the sniper reloading his gun with a grin on his face. The sniper is getting ready to shoot Lincoln, Tom, and Blake next, but as we see Blake screaming and crying for Joel, Lincoln whispers to Tom, "We gotta go." Tom nods and pulls on Blake's shirt and says, "We gotta go, son." And Blake quickly gets up and off the ground as Tom is picking him up, and then Lincoln, Tom, and Blake rush away from the fence and away from the factory before the sniper kills them too.
Damn. That's a shame. Poor Joel. R.I.P. Dave. No, fucking Dave.
Dave and his men are back on the road, and the sun is about to rise. One of the men says, "We'll be there by sunrise, sir." Dave says, "Sounds good." He looks at Sydney and Emma and says to Sydney, "You can keep running your mouth. You can bitch, you can complain, or you can shut the fuck up and watch. It really doesn't matter to me." Sydney wouldn't say anything, and Dave would say, "You know this is how it is. You either do as I say, or I'll cut your goddamn head off and I'll personally deliver it to Lincoln." Your choice. Then before Sydney responds, one of Dave's men finds a car on the side of the road. They check it and they notice that it has a quarter tank of gas, and Dave says, "We can make it back home on that, gentlemen." So they all stuff themselves in this car and ride back to Dave's place. We then see them pull up to the gates of Dave's camp, and we can see he and his men are set up in a military base outside of the city of Washington, D.C. Dave steps out of the car and talks to his men that say, "Glad you're back, boss." Then the guard notices Sydney and Emma in the back of the car, and the guard would ask, "Who the hell is that?" Dave would say, "Open the gates, boys. We've got some things to talk about."
What's interesting?
Back at the suburban estates. Wesley is in his office in his house, and he's cleaning his gun. He then puts it together, and then he hears a knock at his door. Wesley points the gun at the door. The door opens, and we see it's Luke. Wesley says, "It's almost midnight, you stupid fuck." Luke says, "Sorry, boss. I just figured I'd check in and see how you're doing. I never see you." Wesley says, "You should get some rest, soldier." Luke says, "I just want to make sure you're..." Wesley yells, "I said I'm fine, goddammit!" Luke would back up and he would say, "All right, I'll leave if you promise to get out of your house more. I'm just a little worried about you, man, that's all." Wesley, in a sarcastic manner, says, "I really appreciate you looking out for your boss." And Luke would start walking out, and Wesley says, "Hopefully you will live long enough to do that." Luke would look freaked out and he would leave. Wesley aims the gun at the door and looks like he wants to kill Luke, but he doesn't.
Damn. Haley.
We see Haley is fast asleep, but she is woken up by a very loud knock on her door. Luke is at her door. Haley opens up the door and he says, "Oh my god, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were asleep." She interrupts and says, "Oh no, it's fine, but what's wrong with you?" Luke looks a bit freaked out and he says, "Look, with Lincoln and Tom gone and Mark and James being on guard, I didn't know who to go to." Haley says, "Yeah." Luke says, "Wesley threatened to kill me." Haley says, "Well, I know he's been a little unstable lately, but this is something we should talk to Lincoln about when he gets back." Luke says, "Yeah, but he's the one in charge, not Lincoln." Haley looks like she wants to say more, but then they hear at the wall Mark, who's on guard, saying, "They're back!" Haley's face lights up, and Luke and Haley start running towards the front gate.
W is for that. Like it.
Lincoln, Tom, and Blake walk in. Lincoln looks out of breath, and Haley, Luke, and a bunch of other residents run up to him. Haley hugs him tight and asks, "Are you okay?" Lincoln doesn't answer the question and looks at everyone standing in front of him and says, in an angered manner, "Where the fuck is Wesley?" Luke looks at Blake and asks, "Who the hell is that?" Lincoln doesn't answer and yells out, "Come on, Wesley! Come on out, man! You say you're this brilliant leader? That you kept this place together? Well, I got a new challenge for you, buddy." Haley says, "Bates, stop." Lincoln says, "No, man. You claim you're this big hero, meanwhile you sent me and Tom on the supply run and we damn near almost got killed making it back?"
Damn.
Luke interrupts him. Lincoln, what's going on? Lincoln takes a breath and looks back at Haley and then looks back at the group and says, me and Tom went out for supplies and instead, we found something that we didn't want to ever find. And I'm afraid that kind of group that we've always tried to avoid is here. Luke asks, what is that supposed to mean, Lincoln? Lincoln continues, when me and Tom were out there, we encountered men. Men that brutally executed people and would decapitate them afterwards. Afterwards, me and Tom got taken by these men and brought to their settlement. Haley asks, wait, you were in this place? Tom says, oh, not only were we inside, we killed a shit ton of them. But then we escaped, Lincoln says. And that's when we met Blake and his friend Joel. Joel didn't make it. But Blake is here to help, and we will let him help us. Luke would cross his arms and say, I'm afraid that's not your call to make. Lincoln says, well, as long as I'm standing right here right now and giving you people the warning that you deserve, I think I have a say in this. A random man from the crowd would ask, so what's your point? Lincoln would stand there and say, my point is, if we don't fight for what we have, if you listen to that jackass up there, meaning Wesley, then you won't last long. And that is just the honest truth. A random girl in the crowd would ask, so what are you asking from us? Lincoln says, I'm asking you to protect your loved ones, to keep what you have, to stand by your families and fight for each other and defend this place against the evil that's out there. Everyone would look at Lincoln, and Lincoln would say, because we've got a problem on our hands.
Damn straight. Hell yeah.
One hour later, Lincoln and Haley have decided to bring Blake over for something to eat. We see Blake is eating very fast, and Lincoln and Haley look at each other with a small smile that they helped someone. Blake would say, thank you. And Lincoln would say, of course, anytime, man. Now, you might have to stay at our place for the night, just because I'm not in the mood to handle Wesley tonight. But I promise tomorrow I'll go and I'll have a little word with him about you getting your own place here. Blake would say, so you're not in charge here? Lincoln would say, nope. Blake says, because I was already assuming you were already leading this place. Lincoln says, no, that's not me. That's the guy Wesley people talk about. Blake says, well, the way I see it, you're the one that'll be leading these people through this mess against the Vipers. Lincoln says, the Vipers? Blake says, that group at the factory. That's what they call themselves. Lincoln then says, I'm gonna go talk to Tom. Haley says, but he might be out for the night. Lincoln says, his lights are on. He ain't asleep. Lincoln then walks out of the house. Blake says to Haley, I really appreciate the soup. Haley says, thanks. I was a chef before. Blake laughs and says, I can tell. Haley asks, so you and your friend? Blake says, Joel. Haley says, right. So did you and Joel come from anywhere? Blake is kind of hesitant, but he says, me and Joel come from a camp. Our new leader sent us on a mission to find out information about this group. That's how I got to meet your husband. We were both held up by these people and both escaped together. Your husband is a good man. Haley would say, yeah, he is. Blake would say in a scared voice, man, our leader's gonna be pissed once I show up with no Joel. Haley says, either way, I'm sure your leader will be more understanding than Wesley.
Damn.
Haley starts walking away, and Blake says, man, I just hope Dave understands. Haley turns around with a shocked look on her face.
Oh, damn. The Vipers. Fucking Dave.
Chris is putting a knife through the skull of his dead men in the factory that got killed during the fight. He pulls the knife through the last dead man, and Chris looks at his men and says, Gary, send him to me. Chris is sitting in his office. Gary would walk in and he says, "You wanted to see me?" Chris says, "Yes, have a seat." Gary sits down and Chris says, "I left here for a couple of days to go deal with some things out there. I left you in charge of this place and I come back and I find 10 of my men are dead." Gary says in a panicked voice, "I'm so sorry, boss. These new people are a lot more difficult to take down than you might think. I mean, this man named Lincoln isn't like any of the other threats we faced. This one's different." Chris would say, "What do you mean?" Chris says, "I'm saying this man is going to kill more of us if we don't stop him." As we hear Chris giving his speech, we see the suburban estates. They're all thinking they're safe. They're all thinking they've won. But what they don't realize is that they have started something that we will finish for them. Gary would look confused, and Chris, with a small smirk, looks over at Gary and say, "You want to pay back for the hell you raised?" Gary says, "Please, boss, I'll do anything." Chris says, "Okay. Find this Lincoln. I want his head delivered to me by the end of the day tomorrow. And if you die during the process, I won't give a shit." Gary would ask, "What about the rest of the residents?" Chris says, "Once their leader falls and we get a little bit of blood on the blade, we will kill every sorry son of a bitch in there."
Damn. To be continued. Wow. Wow. Alrighty, that was episode 3 of season 2. That was pretty damn good, man. 8.5. I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. Very suspenseful. Intense. Action-packed. Unfortunately, Joel died. That's something very, very, very unfortunate. What a way to go. Right when he escaped. Damn. An interesting kind of conflict with, the back and forth with Gary and Chris, and then with Lincoln and Wesley, and all that situation. That was very, very crazy, very crazy. But I thought it was a good episode. Had a bit of each character, kind of continuing their little story per se, on their kind of point of view and stuff like that. And it definitely was very intriguing. And it cruised. It cruised too. Again, Dan always keeping it. Didn't really feel that much like 32 minutes, but damn. But it was good. Very good. 8.5 out of 10. That was my rating out. Very good. Now we're going to jump right into episode 4, The Broken Man. Like I said, this is going to crunch a little bit over 9. So I'll be a little bit past the 9 o'clock time frame for last of season 2. But again, we'll start right after we finish this. So I'm gonna be speedy, brothers. I'm gonna be speedy. All right. So hit that like button, subscribe. I appreciate it. So Storm, welcome to the stream. Freaking Dan, right? Or Dave, excuse me. Like I said, season 2, episode 1. Last of Us. Coming up next. Yes, 8.5 out of 10. Very good episode. On episode 4. Like I said, I wish it wasn't in the restroom that long. Because I wouldn't be this tight.
Season 2, Episode 4, The Broken Man.
That tight.
Currently, Dave and 2 of his men are looking at Sydney. She looks slightly terrified as they walk up to her. Dave says, I told you to stop talking. I told you to watch. Well, now, I want you to listen.
I'm still watching.
Flashback. We see the covered bridge. We see the river and a little bit of blood in the river.
Freaking nose.
We then see Dave slowly dragging himself out of the water. He starts walking through the woods, and then we can see he is badly hurt after the fight with Tom.
But of course he doesn't die. There's a Dave solo episode. God damn it.
He then slowly runs through the woods, but he's so badly hurt that he falls to the ground. It then starts to rain, and Dave passes out.
You made me hate Dave so much, man. I don't have any sympathy for this fucker. I just want him to have it stop plowing.
Then suddenly, someone with black boots and holding a bow and arrow is standing in front of Dave, and he asks, I've had a rather shitty day, my darling. So if you can just cut the bullshit and tell me where the hell you come from, that would be much appreciated. The woman says, shut up, and puts a bag over his head and says, don't worry, this is only temporary.
Damn. No, I get the plot armor though, I do. I get it. God damn it! I want to be a dead man. Can't be any more satisfying than that. I want him to quit being like frickin' Anton who doesn't die.
The next day, we see the same woman out hunting a rabbit. She kills the rabbit and brings it back to her little camp setup.
So.
We then see Dave up against the tree and his hands are tied up, but the bag isn't on his head. He then tries to chew through the rope in order to get free, but before he can even chew through it, the woman comes up to him and drops the rabbit on the ground and says, not a smart idea, asshole. Dave says, well, Jesus, woman, can you let me free? The woman walks up to him and cuts the rope, and Dave says, what? You're not worried I'm just gonna run? The woman quickly pulls out her knife and puts it to his throat and says, no, because if you have those kind of crazy ideas, I'll cut your fucking throat. Dave starts laughing and says, calm your fucking horses a little bit. Jeez.
Yeah, cut his throat. Kill him.
We see her lower the knife, and Dave slowly gets up and looks around her little camp setup that she's got, and she says, take a seat. I'll try to start a fire. Dave sits down and asks her, are you alone, or do you come from somewhere? She says, none of your concern. Dave says, well, those words mean you're not alone. Fucking lovely. Look, can you just shut the fuck up if you're not going to say anything worth responding to? Dave asks, how many people do you have? And she says, like I said, None of your concern.
Damn. Being a savage.
Then all of a sudden, as they're talking, 3 men come out of the woods and notice this woman talking to Dave, and one of the men says, "Sorry we missed breakfast. Found some good shit though. Enough to bring back to the community."
Damn.
They then notice Dave. The woman says, "Glad you guys made it." The guys' names are William, Blake, and Joel. The first guy named William says, "Damn good to be back, darling. Now,
Oh.
where's the part where you tell me who the hell this is, and I act like I'm happy to see someone new?" The woman says, "I found him last night, passed out and dehydrated. Figured he could have used some help." William says, in a sarcastic manner, "Well, how fucking sweet of you." The woman says, "Well, we're taking him with us." William says, "You vouch for him?" The woman says, "I don't know him well enough. William, you always tell me to not take chances. Well, guess what? You're right. We don't know anything about this guy." Dave would laugh and says, "Huh, and you don't want to know anything, trust me." William says, all right. We head back to the base tomorrow. Until then, he's your problem." The woman says, "I got him."
Yeah, you don't want him. Just killing him will solve the problems easier.
A few hours later, we see everyone is asleep in their tents, and this woman is sitting outside of her tent smoking a cigarette. We see Dave is asleep in a tent as well, but we notice he's having nightmares about the fall of his men, as he's reliving the death of Miles and the rest of his people.
Shoot me.
But the difference is in these nightmares is that Dave is also getting killed by Wesley's people this time.
Ah.
We see blood in the water, and we see a dead version of Dave drowning in the water, and we focus on his dead eyes.
Damn, only a dream though.
Dave wakes up from it, and he's kind of freaked out. He then walks out, and he sees this woman sitting outside and having a smoke. He walks up to her and asks, "Can I have one?" She gives him one, and she lights it for him. Dave asks her, "Can't sleep?" She says, "I never could. Every time I close my eyes, I think about how things could have been if the world had never ended, or my whole family wouldn't have been taken away from me, and I have to live in this world all by myself."
Damn. New character, yeah. See that.
Dave says, "I can understand that." The woman asks, "Who did you lose?" Dave says, "I lost my family. But it was before this." She asks, "What happened?" Dave says, "It was this two-faced prick that killed them. Because he wanted to, I guess. Maybe he just wanted to ruin my life." The woman asks, "Why though?" And Dave would look at her and he would say, "I honestly don't know." Dave would put his smoke out and start walking away and say, "Better get some sleep for tomorrow, when your crazy-ass friends take me to either their community or my death. Either one." The woman says, "They're not gonna kill you." Dave says, "Maybe." And he starts walking away and he would ask, "Through all this bullshit, I never asked your name." The woman says, "Kezia." Dave would say, "Under these more civil terms, I'll say my name is Dave." Kezia says, "Good to meet you, Dave." Dave says, "You have a good night." And Dave would go back into his tent and try to fall back asleep. The next day, William and Blake are loading up their guns, and they see Kezia step out of her tent, and William says, "Well, good morning, sunshine. We hit the road in 10 minutes, all right?" Kezia says, "Sure thing. Where's Dave?" William says, "Ah, your little boyfriend. Yeah, he's down by the river waiting on us." Kezia says, "Shut up, jerk. Just stay out of my fucking business." And then she walks down the river to go get Dave. Blake says, "I can't help but notice she didn't deny it when you said it." William says, "Fuck those two. Let's go."
Sunshine. That's funny.
We see William, Blake, Joel, Kezia, and Dave are all walking through the apocalyptic world on their way to their community. Dave says, "How much further is it?" Joel says, "About 10 more miles." Dave stops and says, "Holy fuck, when you said walk back home, I thought you meant walk back home, not take a fucking hiking trip." William says, "We don't stop." William gives Dave some water and says, "Drink this and keep those hiking boots moving."
Damn.
We see them approaching Washington, D.C. as we see the city from a distance. Dave asks, "You all live in the city?" Kezia says, "Technically no, but the city is almost about a 10-minute walk away from the base." We see William and the others get to the base, and the guard, in a hurry, lets them in. William, Blake, Joel, Kezia, and Dave enter, and one of the guards says to William, "Where the hell have you been? We've been trying to get a hold of you to tell you." William says, "What happened?" The guard says, "The Vipers." We see a bunch of blood in the streets of this place. Dead bodies and a bunch of people crying over their lost loved ones. The guard tells William, "The Vipers came in here while you were gone. I tried to get a hold of you, but you must have been out of range. They tried to take supplies from us, and they told us it wasn't enough. So then afterwards, it was their way. They raped, they killed, they also captured, and then took some of them and brought them back to wherever they come from. John, Will, Thomas, and Ashley were all taken back with them. The community wants answers for this." William says, "Oh my God." He takes a deep breath and says, "They will pay for this." Then he takes Dave and walks him to the cell until he can figure out what he's going to do with him.
Oh shit.
William takes Dave and puts him into this underground cell that they have on base.
Interesting.
A few hours later, William comes to speak with Dave, and he says, "As you know, we've just suffered many losses, but I'm taking the time out of my day to talk to you." Dave says, "I lost my entire group to other people, so I do know what it's like." William says, "What were you doing around here?" Dave says, "Me and my group were battling other folks that were trying to kill us. They won. When it was over, I was the last man standing.
Sorry, I gotta get you back.
William says, shit, man. Dave says, whatever I can do to help, let me know. William says, things are about to get really bad around here, and I'm many fighters short now. And Kezia trusts you. She doesn't usually trust many people. If I let you out, do I have your word that you'll contribute when need be, and do exactly as I say? Dave says, yes, sir. William says, all right, and prove it to me. And Dave has a small smile on his face.
I don't know.
We would see Dave, and he's walking down the street of this place, and he notices residents are all looking super depressed after what they just went through. Then Kezia sees Dave walking around, and she asks, William let you join? Dave says, yeah, I think so. Prick has a heart, I guess. Kezia says, or he's just desperate for fighters. Dave says, huh, yeah, probably the second one. Then they keep walking, and Dave asks, so how long has this place been here? Kezia says, since almost the beginning. About a dozen people were here, were actually part of the military at first. The rest were families who needed a place to be safe. As Dave and Kezia are walking, they notice some of William's men loading up their guns and getting ready to head out.
Damn.
Kezia asks Blake and Joel, where are you guys going? Blake says, William ordered us to go out there and find the Vipers and to get our people back. Kezia looks at Dave and she says, we'll come. Dave looks a bit unsure, but Joel looks at Dave and says, you really look like you've been through hell. Good to have you on board. Joel shakes Dave's hand, and then one of his men gives Dave a machine gun and tells him, get ready. Then they all drive out of the base and head out to find William's people. Two hours later, they pull over into the woods, and we see Dave, Kezia, William, Blake, Joel, and 5 other men get out and go into the woods. One of the men says, we saw the Vipers recently. They always come down this way. Kezia says, just be on full alert. 2 of the men slowly break away from the group, and the first man says, you worried? The second man says, I'm just worried I won't see Ashley again, meaning one of the people gone missing. The first man says, you gotta have a little faith. I'm making it a point to believe that everything is gonna work out. One of the Vipers comes up behind both of them and quickly shoots both of them in the head.
Damn. Jesus. Bastards they are.
William and the others hear this, and William says, Kezia, Blake, Joel, split off and find them. Kezia agrees and goes with Blake and Joel to see what's going on. And William looks at the rest of his men and Dave and says, come with me. Dave says, let's stay low. William and the others keep walking, and then Dave turns his flashlight on and notices blood on the ground. Dave says to William, something looks like it just happened here. And then one of the men look up and see hanging from the trees John, Will, Thomas, and Ashley's heads hanging off the tree.
Damn. That's insane.
William starts breaking down. The men all look broken, and Dave looks at William and he says, "Look, we gotta get going." William says, "We're dead. We're all dead. These vipers are slowly killing us."
Damn. It's insanity.
Dave asks William, "You don't think you can keep them safe?" William says, "They're not gonna stop." Dave looks at the heads up the tree. He sees the men crying. He has a smirk on his face, and he looks at William.
Oh no.
Then out of nowhere, Dave headbutts William and he goes down, then shoots 2 of the men in the head. He headbutts another and then shoots the last one in the throat.
Damn! This motherfucker needs to be dead. He needs to die.
Dave walks up to one of the men down on the ground and Dave shoots him too.
Jesus.
William is on his knees and looks at Dave, who is standing over him with a gun. William says, "You gave me your word." Dave laughs and says, "Let me fill you in on who the hell Dave Miller is. I don't apologize. I don't hesitate. And the least of all, I don't show mercy."
Damn.
He shoots William in the head, and then he reloads his gun and walks away.
Jesus. Insanity.
Then Kezia radios him over the walkie-talkie. Dave picks up the walkie and says, in a fake scared voice, "They killed everyone." Kezia says, "What?" Dave says, "The Vipers attacked us. They killed John, Will, Thomas, and Ashley, and they took out William and everyone." Kezia over the walkie starts breaking down and she asks Dave, "Are you okay?" Dave says, "I'm coming back. Just stay where you are."
Oh. Don't trust that bastard.
The next day. It's only Dave, Kezia, Blake, and Joel that make it back to the base.
Damn.
The crowd of people overwhelm Kezia, Blake, and Joel, and they start demanding answers about where William and the other men are. One of the residents punches Blake in the face, and the crowd starts getting riled up, but then... Dave shoots the gun up in the air and says, "Everybody shut up! What the hell is wrong with you people? We just went out there for you people, to keep you all safe. And some of them, and your leader, paid the price with their lives. I had a group. I lost them to bad people. But God kept me on this earth, and I still wonder why. Now I have my answer. Your leader has fallen, but we are still standing. And I'll be the man to make sure that it stays that way. The Vipers are out there, and they've made their stand. But now, we will make ours." And Dave looks at Kezia, and she smiles and asks, "Will you have us?" Dave sees the crowd, looks more hopeful, and he says, "You're damn right I will."
Oh, shit.
Currently. And there it is. Sydney says, "You're still just as full of shit as you were back then." Dave laughs and says, "It's time to pay Lincoln a little visit." Sydney looks at him and says, "I don't think you know who you're messing with." Dave says, "Oh, believe me, I know a lot about Lincoln. I know he's going to be scared once I tell him I have you and your sister here." Dave says, "We are going to change the world, Sydney." Then he and his men walk out of the room.
bastard, you need to die. You need to quit surviving these random situations.
Later that night,
you just need to die.
Dave pulls over to the side of the road. He looks over at the walkie-talkie, and then he picks it up and radios and says, "Get me to Lincoln." Dave waits, and Lincoln picks up the walkie and says, "Well, well, well, look who's alive after all." Dave says, "You actually thought I was dead? You obviously don't know me well enough." Lincoln is sitting on his porch, and he says, "So why don't you tell me what the hell this is all about?" Dave says, "You know your old friends Sydney and Emma? Well, you couldn't keep your dogs on their leashes." Lincoln looks frustrated at first, but then he says, "Well, it's funny that you say that, because a little birdie told me that one of the new residents of our communities who goes by the name of Blake, who one of my people had a nice little chat with, tells us that he's part of a group with their leader named Dave. So if you even think of killing one of my people, I will put a bullet in your man's head."
Damn.
Dave loads his gun, and he picks up the walkie-talkie and says, "I'll see you soon, Lincoln."
Huh. Damn. Bastard. Damn. That's the end. Wow. Crazy. Pretty good though. I'll say. 7.5. 7.5 out of 10. 7.5 out of 10. That was pretty good. That was pretty damn good. Of course, I didn't like it as much because it focused on Dave, but you know, it was it made sense why you did it. It made perfect sense. So let me quickly give the other one a like. There we go. Excuse me. Alright, so the next episodes will be episode 5 and episode 6. Take My Hand and the Ruling. So, which seems like the mid-season finale, I guess. So, definitely exciting and definitely pretty good though. You're keeping it pretty damn consistent, so I gotta give you credit there. I've been liking them. Pretty damn good. So yeah, that was episode 3 and 4, or that was episode 4, I mean. But yeah, that was 3 and 4 of We're Gone Mad series, season 2. I'm getting notifications for everything now. Okay. So yeah, 7.5 out of 10. It was really good still. And it kind of, you know, and it kind of ties everything. Yeah, whatever. This is crowded. Why didn't you just update before? Amen. All right. So. Yeah, so 7.5. The first one, or episode 3, was an 8.5 out of 10. Or did I give it an 8? No, I gave it an 8.5. And this one, or episode 4, I gave it a 7.5. So very good. Very good episodes. Like I said, I don't like Dave as much. So, hearing his, him killing those poor people and stuff like that is just freaking, it's devastating because it's like, damn, those people didn't deserve that, and that asshole don't deserve to live. So, but he keeps getting away with it. So, but yeah, so that was those episodes. Very good. Playlist in the description. Check out Dan Reviews. Check out his playlist. Show the man some love. Make some fire ass series, and still making new episodes today and stuff like that. So definitely do check them out if you guys are interested. And hope you guys are enjoying the reactions as always. Hit that like button, would appreciate it. About 5 to 7 likes or so, somewhere around there. We'll definitely continue the series going forward. We crushed that goal. We'll continue it sooner rather than later. So, last of the season 2, episode 1 coming up. So we got a lot of fire content on the way. Subscribe if you guys are new. Would appreciate it. Anyways, I'll do it for this one. I'll see you guys in the next one. We'll sign out. Peace. You guys are much closer to safe.